Thanks to all of you who have joined us on the webinar today. I'm Lisa Dolan, a Program Officer in NCUA's Office of Examination and Insurance, and I will be your moderator for the day. Today's webinar will provide guidance and instruction on performing the CUSO Registry annual reaffirmation process. Before we get started, though, we want to make sure you can see and hear the webcast clearly. So we have 3 technical tips for you. Tip number 1, allow pop-ups from this website. Tip number 2, if your display isn't clear, set your screen resolution to at least 1024 by 768. If you have trouble seeing the screen, you can always download the slides, which are located at the bottom of your webinar console. If you'll take a look down below the slide, the slide that you see now, you'll see a yellow, a red, a blue, a green, a gray, and another yellow button. You can download the slides using that gray file folder that, if you hover over, says Resource List. If you want to make the slide bigger, you can also use the tool there in that slide window. There in the top right-hand corner, you'll see 4 arrows right next to a blue button. If you press the 4 arrows, it will enlarge your screen size. You might find that particularly helpful as we go through the slides that cover screenshots of the registry. And finally, tip number 3, if your sound is too low, make sure your volume is turned all the way up, both on your computer and on the webinar console. Later in this webinar, Carrie Murphy, who also works with us in E&I, will be reading the questions you send in during our time together. Several of you have already emailed questions in advance, and we really appreciate that. However, if you do have a question as we go through the presentation, you can use the Ask a Question button there on the left-hand side of your console. We have several folks in the room today. I'll let them introduce themselves to you. Ann, would you like to start?
I will. I'm Ann Belair. I'm the Senior Business Analyst for the CUSO Registry, and I'll be taking you through the process today.
My name is Brooke Tomlinson. I'm the Junior Business Analyst for the CUSO Registry and also the Tester for the CUSO Registry.
I'm Carrie Murphy. I'm a Risk Management Officer in the Examination and Insurance Office.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. During our time together, we'll touch on preparing for the annual reaffirmation, how to amend your data, and we'll go over updating your password. The majority of our time will be spent stepping through the actual system process. And as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the webinar, we'll take some time to answer some of the questions that come in during the presentation. In November of 2013, the NCUA Board approved changes to NCUA regulations that govern the relationships between credit unions and their CUSOs. Those changes, among other things, require CUSOs, through their written agreements with their credit unions, to agree to provide certain financial and operational information directly to NCUA. The 2013 rule changes applied to natural person credit unions and their CUSO relationships, and in May of 2015, the Board approved changes to the corporate credit union rules, which required the same reporting for CUSOs with loans or investments from corporate credit unions. The Board established an annual reporting requirement for CUSOs, which, as implemented, means that CUSOs will be reporting their year-end information to NCUA during the yearly reaffirmation period, which will be from February 1st to March 31st. And the system will officially open for reaffirmation next Wednesday, February 1st, so we're a week out. So existing users should have received an email in December of last year outlining a few things you can do to prepare for your annual reaffirmation process. We'll go over a few of these since they will make your life a little easier when you log in and begin the process. So for all CUSOs, you need to gather your most recent financial audit effective date. You'll be required to input that date in the General Information section of the registry. This is a new field on the General Information tab and is intended to capture the regulatory requirement for all CUSOs to have a financial audit. If you have questions about the financial audit requirement, you can refer to Part 712.3D2 of the NCUA Rules and Regulations. And I want to mention here that if you're a wholly owned CUSO and your audit is consolidated with your owner credit union or owner CUSO, use the effective date of the consolidated audit. Also, you'll notice that when you go into the system and input that date, it needs to be a month-end date. And if you provided us with an audit date last year because you were an expanded reporter, your audit date this year must be equal to or greater than what you provided last year. Secondly, make sure you have an updated customer list effective December 31, 2016. And remember, you're only reporting credit unions. The system will automatically populate your customer list from last year's data, and Ann will show you a little bit about how that works. So if you use your prior customer list as your starting point, you'll need to make a few changes, like removing credit unions you no longer serve, adding credit unions you began serving after you reported last time, and removing any credit unions that are no longer in business as of December 31, 2016 because of a merger or a liquidation. We did have CUSOs last year who tried to upload credit unions that were no longer in existence as of the end of 2015, and their file was rejected. So you have to make sure that you are reporting only live credit unions, ones that are still in business, because the system will not accept credit unions that are no longer in business, and you will receive an error message on that. And finally, gather loan amounts or investment amounts, ownership percentages for your CUSO owners. And to clarify, that loan and investment amount that we're asking for are specifically for loans and investments from credit unions or other owners to the CUSO. You will be required to input a 0, that there are no loans or investment amounts to report. And as a reminder, the system will not accept negative numbers in those fields. You'll also notice, if you're on that registry page, on that owner page, that the registry will accept up to 9 decimal places in the percentage of ownership field for each owner. We realize that not all CUSOs will need 9 decimal places in that percentage of ownership field, but we did have a few last year who needed that functionality, so we wanted to make sure that it was built in for you, so there was a minimal amount of rounding that was necessary. Just like last year, the total ownership must equal 100% to certify and submit your information. If you are a CUSO that provides expanded information, again, those are CUSOs offering what the rule defines as high-risk or complex services. You'll need to gather a few more items, and that includes year-end volume information, if your CUSO offers investment management or lending services to credit unions. We do pull a lot of information from your prior year's registration in for you for your convenience, but volume information does not flow from the prior year since it is outdated. So we're looking for new year-end totals there. All CUSOs providing expanded services will need to gather information related to your most recent audited financial statements, including your total assets, liabilities, gross equity, total equity, gross and net income as of the audit date for the CUSO as a standalone business. And that page will look very familiar to you if you provided expanded reporting and financial information last year. You'll also be asked to upload a most recent audited financial statement. And again, that needs to be an Adobe PDF format. Lastly, if you're a CUSO that's required to provide expanded service information, you'll also need to collect services that you provide to which credit unions, just like you did last year. So now that we've talked a little bit about how to prepare, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Ann Belair, who will walk us through the system. Ann, you want to take it from here?
I will. Thank you, Lisa. Now that Lisa has prepared you for what you need to collect before starting the reaffirmation process, we're actually now ready to start the process. The good news is you did the hard work last year when you initially established your CUSO for the first time. The reaffirmation process will bring over much of your data from your initial registration, such as your general information, services provided, credit union customer served, and owners from the prior year, and will allow you to verify or edit that data. We're going to walk through two scenarios. One scenario is for CUSOs that offer what we call basic services as defined by the rules, and the second scenario is for CUSOs that offer complex services or have a high volume of customers and owners and would like to use Excel to import those. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing, you're going to access the registry just like you did last year. It's with the https://cusoregistry.ncua.gov from your browser. And when the terms of use page appears, you will read it, and if you are okay with it, you will go ahead and click I agree. And then what appears will be your login page. Now, this will be a little, you'll need to remember, as Lisa talked about in the preparation and in the email that you got, is you will need to remember your username and password that you used to initially establish your CUSO record. Now, if you do not have that available, you can use the forgot your username or password, but in that case, you will also need to remember the security questions and answers that you had. But no worries, the very last page of the slide is a contact page, which will allow you to contact support at servicedesk.ncua.gov. And one thing to note up here also is you have additional resources available under the help area. So once you have your username and password, then you would click login, and then we'll start the process of actually finishing the reaffirmation. So as I said before, we're going to go through the basic services, so a CUSO that offers basic services first. And after you log in, the very first page that you're going to land on is what we call the landing page. Now, what you will see here is a list of CUSOs that you have access to. Now, you may have, depending on your user permissions, you may only have view access, or you may only be able to contribute information, and if you're administrator, you can also add account users to the system. Now, the new things that are on this page, the last registration year, you can actually see what is the last year that you registered the CUSO for. And then the task area is also new. So for the CUSO, you can see what is the next action that needs to be performed here. So if you don't see anything in that task area, you know that you were completed with that CUSO. But if you're ready to start reaffirmation, you're going to see a red start reaffirmation. If you need to continue your reaffirmation because you needed to log off and come back on and you didn't have all your information, you'll see continue. And then if you started an amendment because you need to change data on your current registry, you'll see continue your amendment. Now notice you also are able to register new CUSOs. So if you are managing a new CUSO, you can still register, and you may need to come back and continue the registration. Now, for purposes of this demonstration, there's two ways to start the reaffirmation, and you can do it from the task area, or in this case, I'm going to click on the CUSO's name because I want to look at the details that I entered last year before starting the process. So this is what we call the CUSO's individual detail page. And we're going to just highlight on some of the key points of the detail page. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is until you certify and submit your new data, what you're seeing is the data prior to the new data being certified and submitted. And now we've added areas where you can actually see who certified the data and the date that they did it and the last date that you're viewing. But for me, I don't remember necessarily what I entered last year. So under the download Excel area, you have the ability to download last year's information, and it will put it in an Excel format for you to view prior to starting. So now once I've viewed that information, from here we're going to start reaffirmation. But remember, as I said before, you could have also done that from the landing page if you already had your information available. When you start reaffirmation, the first thing that you're going to be asked is, do you really need to reaffirm your data? So if your CUSO was merged or acquired or closed or dissolved or no longer a CUSO or some other reason, you would answer no, and the other, if you do other, put a reason in there. Obviously, for purposes of this, we're here to show you how to reaffirm because you do need to. So we are going to leave our selection at yes, and then we're going to continue. Now, the very first page that you will get to is the general information. So the system wants to step you through verifying your information. Now, notice the yellow at the top tells you that this information was brought over from your previous registry record. So again, you did the hard work last year. Now you just need to verify the information. So your general information covers your CUSO name, your mailing address, your CEO information, your trade names, and on the next slide we're going to talk about the new field at the bottom that you need to enter. Now notice general information is a long page, so in your browser on the right-hand side will be a scroll bar that you can use to go down the page. So now we're seeing the bottom half of the general information page, and as Lisa indicated earlier, all CUSOs are required to enter the financial audit effective date. And it needs to be a month-end date, and it needs to be greater than or equal to your last audit date. Now, if for whatever reason, if you're a new CUSO or newly formed or you don't have that audit yet, you can click No Audit, and you will provide a reason as to why you don't have an audit date. But again, this information was brought over, you're verifying it, and you will need to add the financial audit effective date. Now, as navigation tips, and this is, I'll point this out as we go along, is if you use the continue in the lower right-hand corner, that will step you through the process and save the data on the page as you go forward. So in this case, I'm finished with my general information, and I'm going to go ahead and go to, it takes me right to the services provided for the CUSO. Now note, if you did not get to this page and you did not get a green check mark, you can go back to general information, but if you did not land on services, it didn't take you to this page, go to the top of your page, and any required fields or errors that you had will be listed at the top in red. So at this point, what you want to do is just confirm your services, and you can check off any new services you have or take off any services by checking on the box. And the services page is also very lengthy, so again, you can use your bar in the right hand in your browser to scroll down through the page. So we're going to take a look at the bottom section of the services page. And one thing that Lisa will talk about later in the presentation is if your CUSO is dormant or inactive, and that's one of the items that is available to you under Other. But again, that will be discussed in more detail in the presentation later. Navigation tip again, notice now that I'm into the second section, the back button has become available to me. And I can click back, and that will take me to the previous section. And you can see here where you're highlighted on services, the previous section would be the general information section. And again, I'm very happy because I see that green check mark on general services. And we'll talk about when we get to certify and submit why having check marks in every section is important. Another navigation, we have the save and exit. If for whatever reason, and you know this happens all the time, your boss interrupts you and you need to go do something else besides finish the registry, you can save and exit and log off the registry, and then at your convenience, you can come back in, log back in, and continue the reaffirmation process. So we're going to go ahead and continue. And one thing I wanted to point out here is if I'm not using continue to go to section, and on the left-hand side I'm just jumping from sections, you will not have saved your information. So the system's going to give you a warning message that, are you sure you want to leave this page without saving? And it tells you that you can save by using your continue, or you can save by using the Save Now. So this is just, again, a navigation tip for you. The easiest thing is to use Continue Through, but if you do use the left-hand options, just make sure that you use the Save Now button to save your information. Once we continue off of services and our services were saved because we used Continue, you will be presented with a question about, do you want to upload your customers with an Excel file, or do you manually want to upload your customers? Now, the system will only ask you this the first time you come into the registry and answer the question, and then if you come back to finish your registry, you don't need to answer the question again. But you will have the ability, if you did say, now I want to use Excel, you can change between manual entry and Excel. So in our case, we're just doing basic services and not using Excel. So I would say no, and I would go ahead and continue. And then it automatically brings me to my list of customers. And these were carried over from last year for you. And it also indicates if you had a loan or an investment in that customer. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't download your Excel file when you first started, you have the ability to download the previous customer file now. And if you want to re-enter and you don't want to have anything here, you can go ahead and say, I just want to start fresh, and the system will remove everything in the customer list. Now, I don't know if you remember what Lisa said at the beginning was, you do need to, the system will not allow you to continue if you have invalid charter numbers. And some of the credit unions merge or dissolve, or those numbers are no longer valid for whatever reason. So we are now indicating for you underneath the customer, you will see a message that says this credit union is no longer valid. Now, we've also provided for you here on the screen the charter number lookup, so you can go right and do your charter number lookup. If you wanted to switch to Excel, you can do that. So all these options are now available to you, and the information from last year, for your convenience, was ported over. So once you've confirmed that your customer information is correct, you can go ahead and continue. And when you continue, it will take you to the owner's edit decision, because you can also upload your owners via an Excel file. And again, just like we said for customer, the owners, you can either use Excel or not, and you can also change between once you make the decision, and you'll only be asked the question one time. So if you come back, you don't have to continue to answer Excel yes or no. So in our case, again, we're staying with no, and we'll go ahead and continue. And again, the system brings over all that hard work you did last year, and it actually does a little bit more. So if on your customers you added new customers or indicated that customer now has an investment in your CUSO, those customers will automatically be brought over as owners for you. And then in addition, any of your owners from last year will also be brought over. And you'll need to, as Lisa said, this is one area where you need to redo the ownership percentage, and you will need to provide the investment and loan amounts. Now, if for whatever reason those are zeros, you can do zeros. And remember, the ownership percentage, you can either enter a whole number or up to 9 decimal positions if you need it. So this is what your owner's page looks like when you initially come to it. Now we'll see it with information entered into the fields. And for this example, I went ahead and showed that you could use all 9 positions, but you will only see what you enter. You do not have to see, anything but 40, or I may see 40.01. Whatever you enter is what will be displayed. So once your owners are information is as you need it, and if you need to delete one, you can just use the X, or if you need to add one, you can use the Add New Owner button. And this is also true on the customers page. You just X if you want to delete one, and you do Add New Customer to add one. So if we're happy with our owners, we're going to go ahead and continue. Now, the one thing is, if you do enter zeros, the system will just ask you to confirm that that really was your intent and that you just didn't miss putting in numbers. Now, when it comes over, as you saw on the initial, it was blank, so you do have to put a 0 or the number in order to continue on. So if you were okay that the zeros are accurate, you can go ahead and click OK. And then we're going to be ready to certify and submit. Now, I told you before the greens are important. So if you do not have a check mark next to each section, the system is not going to allow you to certify and submit your data. Now, at this point, you may want to see everything that you've entered, which is we allow you to download a draft Excel file of all the information that you just entered so that you can review it. And then if you are satisfied with it, you can click Certify and Submit. And at that point, you will now see a blue Certify and Submit button become available for you. And if you want to certify and submit, you're done. You go ahead and click the Certify and Submit, and it will now let you download the final file of what you entered, or you can go ahead and return to your list of CUSOs. Now, at this point, you also received a confirmation email. So that is the reaffirmation for a CUSO offering basic services, where In essence, all the work you did last year was brought forward and you were making minor edits to the information. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to showing you what it looks like after you did your reaffirmation. So now when we started, it said start reaffirmation, and now there is no task next to our CUSO sample 1. And if I do the details of the CUSO, I now see the current certification information and the current year. I now have the ability to not only download the 2015 data, but the 2016. And we're going to later on talk about amend, but if I do realize I have misentered something, you will now see the amend button and you can amend your information. So now we're ready to start annual reaffirmation for a CUSO that offers complex services.
And Ann, this is Lisa. The majority of our users are those basic services types of users,
Yes,
right?
that's
I mean,
correct.
that takes care of the overwhelming majority of users that have basic services and one customer for the most part,
That is correct.
their owner credit union, and may have 1 or 2 owners. So this process of registering and renewing the information for this year should be fairly simple.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it was very simple. Yes.
And so now Ann will touch on the annual reaffirmation, like she said, for the complex services, and you'll go into like this Excel process, right?
That is correct.
Excellent. Thanks.
So now we're ready to start CUSO with complex services. And after you log in, you're going to be on the landing page, and it looks the same as the landing page that you just saw. So what we're going to do is spend most of our time on the pages that you did not see during the basic process. So same, you're going to get to your reaffirmation decision. It's going to say, do you need to reaffirm? And you have the option to say no. But again, for this process, we are saying yes. We also have the general information that you verify, and the information is brought over from last year. You do need to enter your financial audit effective date. Now, in this case, on a complex, this will also carry over to your financial information page where you need to complete more information, so you do not need to re-enter this twice, but you will enter it here and it will carry over for you. Again, with the navigation tips, using continue to go through section to section is the best thing, and you will get messages if you use the left-hand side and don't save your information. You will verify your services. And again, the services page is quite long, so you have the browser. You can use your up and down arrows in the browser. Again, just to stress the navigation, you can go back and you can continue once you confirm that all your services are correct, that you have not removed any or added any, and you just do that with the check marks. Now, notice the little I. This is going to mean that there's additional information or expanded information that is going to be needed. And so this is a page that you only see if you need to provide expanded information per the regulations.
And Ann, that's really important. Those tabs don't appear for the user until they've confirmed the services are those that require the expanded reporting, right? I mean, you're not going to see that additional service information, the financial information tab.
That is correct. So what Lisa's referring to on the left-hand side, this only showed up after you confirmed your services. So even though you were complex last year, the financial audit information tab did not show up, and the additional information did not show up until you confirmed your services. So once your services are confirmed and you're on the additional service information, as Lisa said earlier, this is one area where information from the prior year is not brought forward. So you should have collected your volume information in order to provide the current 2016 information for the expanded services. And this is just other expanded services. This is all depending on which services you selected will indicate which of these sections you see. So once you've entered all the amounts, you will go ahead and continue. And this is just a reminder that if you're using the left-hand navigation, you're going to get a message that your information has not been saved. So please use continue or the save now. Now, once you've entered your expanded information, again, just like when we went through the basic, it's going to ask you, do you want to use Excel or do you want to manually enter your information? I'm going to first show you what the manual screen looks like because it is different than what you saw earlier, and then we will show you uploading with Excel. So on the customers, notice the difference from the basic to the complex. You need to indicate which of your credit union customers receive which of the complex services. Now, if you added a new service that your CUSO provides to the credit unions, that is highlighted in yellow for you. And you're also, if you have any invalid charter numbers, those are at the top indicated in red. So at this point, you can remove any customers, or you can use the lookup in the browser to find new charter numbers. You can add new customer. You can also say, I want to start fresh, or I want to export last year's information if you want to take a look at that before getting started. And there's hover text available. So what we wanted to show you was there is, if you cannot remember what Lisa talked about what's wanted, what you need to put in loan amount or investment amount, if you hover on those, these will be the boxes that appear of additional information. So be aware that you can hover on items, and if there's text available, additional instructions, those will be provided for you. So this is the customer loan instructions. This is the customer investment amount if you were to hover on investment amount. Now, switching to using Excel, because I have 300 or more customers, I'm going to use the Excel upload. Now, one thing to note is if your customer volume is over 300 or your owners, you will not even be asked the question. It will automatically take you to this page that steps you through uploading customer information. So what we're going to do is go ahead and download the pre-populated Excel file. And when you download the pre-populated Excel file with information from last year, it automatically takes you to an instructions page. So if you have customers It will list your customers on the first sheet and instructions on the second sheet, but it opens to the instructions for you so you know what the Excel file is looking for. So once you review the instructions, you are automatically on the pre-filled customer template. Because I said download the pre-filled template, you could have just downloaded an empty template and only the headers would have been there plus the instructions. So again, even in the Excel file, if you have any invalid customers, charter numbers, they will be listed in red at the top. And if you offered any new services, that will be highlighted in yellow for you, because that will be certainly one where you need to indicate which of your credit union customers receive that service. But this brings over, because I said download from last year's information, it does have your amounts and it does indicate which customer received that service based on last year. So you need to make the appropriate edits. Once you've edited this and saved your file, you will just follow the steps on the screen. So now I'm going to go to 2, upload your complete customer file. And when you upload, it will ask you to select your file. So I'm just browsing my computer and I'm picking my customer file. And if on the upload there are errors and I did not fix some of the charter numbers, or I put an invalid charter number in, or there's something incorrect in the investment amounts or loan amounts, you will now get an error file, and the system tells you in red, these are your customers that are not correct. Now, if you're like me, I need to go research this and I need to come back. So we've provided the ability to download your errors. So I can click download and it'll actually give me a text file of those that I can then print out, review, and work on my Excel file at my leisure. Now, you come back in and you say upload again, you select the file, and if you're successful, you will get the green success message. So your import was successful. Once your import is successful, you can review the customers that were imported. Now, one thing to note about using Excel is if you need to make updates to your customers, then you will do the update and it will take you back to the Excel to download, make your corrections, and upload. And you have the ability here to also, look up charter numbers. You can edit with the browser, and those options are available to you. So once your customers are correct, you're going to continue. And now it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with your owners? Do you want to upload those via Excel, or do you want to do that manually? Now, notice, too, as I go through, I'm paying attention to my green check marks because you want to make sure each area is successful. So we're going to take a look at what the manual screen looks like, and then we will upload the owners through Excel. So notice again, the system will bring over as much information as it makes sense to from last year. Now, owners are a little different in the fact that customers that have a new investment in you, and then also the previous owners, will all be brought over together. So it's not just last year's information, it's also any new customers and any customer with an investment in your CUSO. So you can make the appropriate edits. So this is why you see here where the amounts are filled in, because that came over from your customer screen. But the owner from the previous year, all the amounts are blank, and you need to collect those, and you're going to need to re-enter that information. That's part of the preparation that Lisa was speaking to earlier. Okay, now this is what it looks like when your owners are filled in. And again, the percentage can go out to 9 if you need it. If you need to add a new customer, you can add, or you can use the X key to remove any owners. Once your information is accurate, then you can go ahead and continue. And in this case, that was the manual process. So I want to use Excel. If I say yes to Excel, this will be the page that is shown to you. And it's going to step you through your options. So you can either download an empty template, or you can download your pre-populated template, which will have the new template from this year, plus your owners and information from last year. And it will also include customers that you've said have an investment in your organization. So it won't be just last year's information. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Owners Excel. When you download, it takes you immediately to the instructions page, and then your owners are on the first sheet. So make sure to read through the instructions. And then go to your owner sheet and make any necessary changes. Now on your owners, just like your customers, if any have invalid numbers, they will be shown at the top in red so that those are easily identifiable for you, and then you can use the charter number lookup to find the correct and current charter number. So once your owner information is accurate, then you would go ahead and save the file, and then we're going to go and upload. But I'm going to spend just 1 second more on the owners Excel file, because one of the most common problems is with the owners, with the percentages not adding up to 100%. It is very, very important that the percentage be 100. So just make sure in your percentage column that does total 100. You cannot save the owners page unless you have 100% ownership. So once we've saved our Excel file, we're going to go ahead and it's ready to set through. I'm going to go step number 2, and I'm going to upload. And just like customers, if there was an error, you would get a red file. If it's a very large file, you may get a message that says, please wait, processing, and then once you've had success, you will see the green success message. So now that our owners are successfully uploaded, you can review your owners. And again, just like with customer Excel, if you do need to make changes, you will update your customers, and you will use the Excel option. You will download the file, make your changes, and upload. If you need to change and you want to manually enter, you can edit with browser. You can download previous registration and look up your charter numbers. Those are all available for you. So once you're happy with your customers, again, I'm continuing through. And this is new for complex CUSOs that offer complex services. You did not see that with the basic. And as we said before, your financial audit date was brought over from the general information. And we've relabeled the next field because everyone was putting in their auditor name, and really what was needed was the audit firm. So just a special note there is you need to bring in the audit firm. From the financials that Lisa asked you to gather at the beginning, you need to fill in your appropriate financial information. And then you would upload your financial audit statement just like you did last year. and this would be the current one that goes with the audit. Once the audit information is uploaded, you go ahead and you continue. And just like the previous process, all the sections need to have a green check mark. You can download your information. If you're happy with it, you can say, yes, I want to certify and submit. You will now have the certify and submit button. You have the ability to download the final report. You can return to your CUSO list, and in addition, there's a sample of the email that you receive confirming that your registry for the new period is complete. So congratulations, you've made it. And again, you did the hard work last year. This is all bringing over your information from the previous year and letting you edit it. So it really should be a much simpler, it really is more of a verification process and uploading any new financial numbers. Same here, I know I'm successful. I love to see this. There's nothing for me to do in my task area, which is always a happy thing for me. And there's just two areas that we want to touch on as other functions that you can do in the registry. We mentioned amend a little earlier, but we also want to remind you about changing your password before you leave the registry.
And this changing a password is real important for this cycle, right?
Very, very important for this cycle. Yes, so we're going to get to those screens. So we won't spend a lot of time on amend, just knowing that after you've reaffirmed, you will always be offered the opportunity to amend the CUSO, and the amend are the same screens that you just went through. You can go to whatever page you need to make a change to, make that change, go to certify and submit, and you get your email that you certified and submitted, and you can download your amendment changes. And the system will track when the amendment, who last certified and submitted and the year that you're submitting. So amendment is, no different than your reaffirmation, other than it's really just changing the New Year's data. But as Lisa said, we're going to talk about, just for a second, change your password, and you access that. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you have your profile where it says your name. If you click on that, there's change your password. Now, with the government security requirements, your password will expire in 15 months. So if you do not change it, you will at some point become locked out of the system because you have not updated your password, and then you would need to contact the help desk about going through a reset and verifying who you are. So please, when you're doing your reaffirmation, take the time to change your password. So I click on change password. It's going to ask me to put in my old and what's my new password, and confirm, and it always gives you the guidelines in the help text here about what it's looking for the format, and you'll get an email verification to click on a link to come back and say, yes, this is me, I am changing it, and then you would, like me, I like to log in again with my new one just to make sure that it really works and then log out, but that's just my personal preference. But the important thing to note is at some point, if you don't do that, you are going to get locked out of the CUSO registry. So please do that when you first come in.
And Ann, you said 15 months. And that's 15 months from the date they created it, right?
That is correctly.
Not 15 months like from this current login period.
From when you initially created your user ID and password, which was sometime starting in February last year.
Right.
So once your password's changed, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, and she's going to go over with you questions that are CUSOs frequently asked.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. Before we take questions from the audience, I want to cover a few of the most frequently asked questions we've gotten over the last year, and actually some that we've gotten over the last couple of weeks. And the first one is, my CUSO closed during the year. Do I need to do anything in the registry? And that depends on what you mean by closed. If the credit union truly closed, whether it was dissolved or no longer has a loan or investment from a credit union and is no longer in business, then we would ask that you come into the system, log in, choose that CUSO, start reaffirmation, and you get the pop-up window that says, do you really need to reaffirm? And showed us that at the beginning. And you have a yes or a no option, and if you choose no, just tell us why. And really the key there is whether or not a credit union has an outstanding loan or investment to that CUSO. Secondly, do subsidiary CUSOs need to register or reaffirm? And the answer, in short, is yes. If you truly meet the definition, the regulatory definition of a subsidiary CUSO, then you do need to come in and number one, and register if you didn't already, or reaffirm your information from last year. Next, do I have to update my customer list throughout the year as things change? And in short, the answer is no. The rule requires CUSOs to report information on an annual basis. And that time period, that effective date, is the end of the year, December 31 of each year. We do know that relationships change throughout the year, and that can be, that could be very frequent. If you are a large CUSO that has relationships that change during the year, but you are not required to come in and update that on an ongoing basis. So for example, we do know that examiners, because they're getting this CUSO registry information for the first time and validating it during examinations, they've noticed that information, if they're in, for example, in the credit union in September, and that credit union began a new relationship with the CUSO, it may not have been reported in the last registry reporting date, and that's okay. You will report that new relationship this year because it was something that happened during the year, and it is what your customer list is as of December 31, 2016. Next, as a shell CUSO that's currently inactive, do we need to reaffirm, or do we need to even register? And the key to that is whether or not, again, a credit union or a holding company, right, if you're a subsidiary, has an outstanding loan or investment to that CUSO. So, right, if it doesn't have an outstanding loan or investment, then the answer would be no. What do I put in the investment and loan fields on the customer and owner pages? And this was a very common error last year, particularly for those CUSOs who are offering lending services to credit unions. So the loan and investment fields, and we've tried to add that hover text that Ann showed you, are really intended to capture the loan or investment from the credit union to the CUSO. So it is unrelated to loan volume, if you're a lending CUSO, loan volume that you generated for that credit union. So sometimes those wires got crossed, I think, last year, and we tried to handle those errors as we noted them on an individual basis, one-on-one with CUSOs. But just for clarity this year, make sure that you are putting the loan and investment amounts that are from the credit union to the CUSO. And lastly, why can't I upload my Excel file? And 9 times out of 10, if not more than that, 99% of the time, when we had CUSOs who tried to upload an Excel file, it was kicked out because either there were invalid credit unions on the list, the ones that no longer existed, or not all the fields were filled in properly and formatted properly as required by the Excel format file. So that's why when you download that Excel file this year, it opens to those instructions so you can make sure, number one, you're following the instructions and understand what's on the other tab. And we tried to make sure that we identified things on your Excel file in red, for example, those credit unions that no longer exist. Or, for example, if you indicated you have a new service, we've highlighted that in yellow, just to draw your attention to those particular items that need to be taken care of. So now that we have covered those frequently asked questions, we're going to take some questions that have come in during the presentation here, and I will let Carrie Murphy read some of those for us.
So our first question has to do with current registration year. So how long do I have to make a change to my current registration information, which would be for 2015? And all changes need to be made by next Tuesday, January 31st, prior to the February 1st opening of the reaffirmation process.
Right. So if you heard anything here about the loan or investment amounts and maybe you realized that you've reported something incorrectly, you have until January 31st to get those changes made. And then beginning February 1st, you're going to be inputting information for 2016. So you have just about a week, a little less than a week at this point, to get those changes made. And if you have any problems doing that, you can always give our technical support desk a call, or we have a couple of mailboxes here at the end of the slides that we'll show you. I did want to point out, Ann mentioned that within the system there are all the help tools, there are instructions, FAQs, quick guides. There's also a contact drop-down that has our contact information there as well. All right, got another one?
Yes. What if my CUSO is new and will not have its 12/31/16 annual audit completed until about May or June of 2017? How do I show this again on the CUSO registry?
Well, you can, the system will allow you to select no audit, right? I don't have an audit, and then you'll explain why you don't have an audit quite yet. When it becomes available, you'll log into the system. You'll go in and fill out you'll amend. You'll start the amendment process. You'll be able to fill out that information and upload it then.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is, how do you go about obtaining an ID and password? Individuals who filed last year are no longer with the organization, so we need to get credentials to be able to file.
So as a user, you can create a user account in the system. If you have a CUSO that is in the system right now, and the individual who registered it and if they're the only user, if you need help getting access to that CUSO, you need to call our help desk, because what we want you guys to do is make sure you have more than one user. Particularly want more than one user that has administrator privileges, because, for example, if you have only one user and that one user leaves, then you get kind of in a pickle. But if you call our help desk, we can help you get access to a record that exists if you don't have access to it.
Our next question is on investment. Is the investment amount listed in the owner's page the initial investment amount or the current balance of the investment?
We would be looking for the current balance.
Great. My credit union has created a holding LLC due to purchasing a new headquarters building with tenants. Would this be considered a CUSO?
I'm making the assumption here that when you created the LLC, you funded it, the credit union funded it with a loan or an investment. That would be my underlying assumption here. And if that's the case, then yes, it is a CUSO and would need to register.
If we have a credit union-owned CUSO that is active but not being used, do we still need to go through the annual reaffirmation process?
And that really keys on, again, the outstanding loan or investment. If you have a business, right, this LLC, like I like to refer to kind of sitting on the shelf, it is not funded, right? There's no outstanding loan or investment or ownership in that particular entity, then no, you would not need to come in and register it. If there is an outstanding ownership investment loan, then yes, we would expect that CUSO to be registered.
The next question. Late last year, we added an individual EIN for our CUSO. It is still the same, except before it was using the credit union's EIN. It won't let me change this EIN. How do I correct during the reaffirmation process?
So what you'll need to do is call our help desk at 1-800-827-3255, and we do have the ability to help you get that changed. But it will require our assistance.
If you're a small credit union and have a CUSO, but do not have any ownership in the CUSO other than the normal perpetual share account, does the credit union need to register the CUSO?
So I'm a little confused by that language of perpetual share account, but no ownership. So I guess I'm a little confused about that language. I mean, if the credit union has placed funds in the CUSO in the form of an investment or a loan, then we would expect it to be registered. And if the individual who's asking that question wants to provide a little more detail, please send us an email to CUSO Registry at ncua.gov. Send us your contact information, and we can talk to you a little bit more about that if you need us to.
Thanks, Lisa. Can credit unions see which CUSO listed them as customers? During our NCUA exam this year, we found several CUSOs that listed my credit union as a customer, but it was an error.
So that is not available for credit unions right now. We do know that is something that credit unions are interested in seeing. We've talked about how to best accomplish that goal, and we are working towards that. We've considered a couple of options, including maybe having that information feed from the CUSO registry into the credit union, into Credit Union Online, into your profile maybe. But we're in the process of how do we really work that out, work the logistics out for that. But we do understand that is a desire that credit unions have, and understand why.
Another question we have, the credit union created a private foundation with no ownership or loans from the credit union. My understanding is this is not considered a CUSO. Is that correct?
Not knowing all the details of that, on the surface it does not sound like it. I would need to know a little bit more about kind of what that looks like, but just on the surface, it does not sound like a CUSO. How are we doing on our questions? We're okay on time, but I think we've reached the majority of it. It seems like some of those questions kind of had the same themes of the ones we're looking at here look like some of the same themes that we've already answered in terms of those that came in on the webinar and those in the FAQ. Carrie, is that about right?
Yes, it looks like that's the end of the questions.
Okay, great. So like I said, if you do have a specific question that we didn't cover, or you want to provide us more details or want to talk one-on-one, or if you run into any problems as you begin your registration February 1st, we do have some contact information for you. Before we get to that, though, I do have a resource page for you that lists the resources that we have, our letters to credit unions that addressed the CUSO registry. We have specific rules and regulations that we can refer you to. There's the handy link to the registry at CUSO Registry .ncua.gov that will lead you right to the CUSO registry when you're ready. And then, Ann, if you'll move to the next slide, we have all of our contact information. We welcome your calls and emails. We try to get to them as quickly as possible and resolve any issues that you have. We hope this webinar was helpful and that you could see exactly how to walk through the process as you renew your information for 2017. I'd like to thank Ann for all the work that she did preparing for the webinar and getting the slide deck together for you. I do recommend that you download the slides on the console here so that you have them to refer back to. I think you might find those a handy resource as you begin your registration process. We will try to get those slides posted to our CUSO Registry webpage when we update it on February 2nd. You'll be able to access those slides on that particular page. I'd like to thank Carrie for reading the questions and for the other support members we have in here in the room, including Franz Ientu with our OCIO, who provided web support for us, and On24 for hosting the webinar today. I thank all of you for attending and hope you have an enjoyable rest of the week. Thanks to all of you again, and have a great afternoon.